Hey guys, so today I want to talk about something a little different and I would really love your input. So I hope that you guys comment because I think this would be a great subject to learn from one another on. And that is what homeschooling is not. So my daughter just recently turned 10 and we started homeschooling her, or just being more intentional at home with education, when the year she was 3 turning 4. So we are 6 to 7 years in on this journey, so to speak, and I thought by now, I actually kind of envisioned the future when I started, and I thought by now it would look a certain way, or that it would have met certain, fulfilled certain things, or measured up to certain expectations, and I can identify those now in hindsight, but when I first started, I don't think I knew all of the expectations I had placed on homeschooling. And this is not something, this isn't, you know, in relative to the reasons we started homeschooling, but just ideas I had, perceptions I had of homeschooling, or things I've heard from other people. And so I've identified a few things that I thought that homeschooling would be, or would look like, or what it would fulfill. And I just wanted to chat about some of those things that I've learned along the way, kind of my journey with homeschooling. And I would love to hear from you guys too, some things that you thought about homeschooling that turned out to not be true, because maybe there's somebody who is thinking they're doing something wrong, or you're hitting a wall at the end of the school year and you just need to hear that you're not the only one who has had that expectation, or who is finding out that homeschooling doesn't quite look that way. So first things first, homeschooling is not separate from home life, at least not for me. Keep in mind that all of these are obviously specific to my circumstances, so it might be very different for you guys, but these are just my thoughts. Homeschooling is not separate from home life. Initially, when we started homeschooling, I thought we would always have a classroom, always have set school hours, always, you know, keep our Monday through Friday for school and our Saturday, Sunday for home, and we would only be homeschooling till 3 o'clock in the afternoon and never after that. But what I've learned along the way is that homeschooling is absolutely not separate from home life. If anything, that's a huge bonus, because as they are learning to do life and school all the same, I think that they will be lifelong learners because they'll know how to blend the two. The way that looks for us at home is, again, I thought we'd have our chores done by 8, start school, have a lunch break, continue school, stop, have dinner as a family, go to bed. But the reality is we kind of ebb and flow. We're inside doing some school, we're outside taking a break. While we're outside, we're cleaning up the backyard. We come inside, we do some more school, we listen to our read aloud while we're completing our chores. Everybody's helping with lunchtime, everybody's helping with the baby. Sometimes you don't finish by 3, sometimes they need a mental break and they finish math after dinner. And all of those different, you know, the way that the world works once they're outside of our home is kind of the foundation for how their education is going as well. And I actually appreciate that. Although when I started homeschooling and I would hear people say, you know, homeschooling is not doing school at home. If you have that expectation, you're gonna be mistaken. Initially, I could not fathom that. That felt too out of control for me. But here we are, however many years later, and I really appreciate that. So if you're in a place where you feel like you're struggling because you need to do dishes while your kids are doing a lesson, just try to keep in mind that homeschooling doesn't have to be separate from your home life. Number 2, now this is a huge one for me, although in certain seasons of life, it could actually be the opposite. But keep in mind that I'm coming from the place of being a people pleaser. Homeschooling does not, Abby, make you more available to others. I think there's a sense of guilt that I have sometimes that I'm able to stay at home with my kids and I'm able to homeschool, and coupled with maybe some comments by others, and I don't really know exactly what's caused me to think this way, but I overextend myself because I think, well, I am available and they're working, and so what happens is homeschooling ends up on the back burner because I'm making myself available to others and their kids needs. I remember at one point I was doing like car pickup for a lot of different people because they were working moms, and I just felt like, well, I am home at 3, so I should offer. And it's never been really other people taking advantage of me. It's just me overextending myself because I was insecure about being a stay-at-home mom, or thinking that, you know, it was lazy to be at home or something like that. But Yeah, so Abby, homeschooling does not make you more available to others. If anything, the demands of your own life sometimes makes you less available to school. And so I think that's just something that I've had to learn the hard way. Maybe some of you haven't had to learn that the hard way and you've been good, a good advocate for yourself and for your family, but that's not the case for me. And it's taken me a long time to learn that, but I have learned that, and I'm confident in that now, that I am homeschooling, you know, from my family and from my children's needs, and I don't have to feel bad about that, and I don't need to overextend myself to other people in their circumstances. That being said, if you have a friend who's very sick and you're helping with her kids, or if you have a friend who just had a baby and you want to help her with her family as they're adjusting, or you have a, like my mom has my grandpa living with her, and so I try to make myself available when at all possible to her. There are certain seasons of life that it is a huge blessing that you can be more available to others, but that also means that your homeschool shifts. So keep that in mind, but I'm speaking in general terms that it shouldn't, you know, you shouldn't every Tuesday feel like you should have to pick up everybody else's kids and do things for everyone else. You are right where you should be. Okay, I wrote these down because I didn't want to forget. Homeschooling is not for others. If we subject ourselves and put our homeschool under the authority of somebody else's opinions, then it is no longer our homeschool. And this, again, is something I've had to learn the hard way. Initially, I think I was just too focused on what other people thought, or what other people thought we should be doing, or what other people think homeschooling looks like, and I wanted to prove to them that, you know, this isn't how homeschooling always turns out. And so what happened was I was subjecting our family to other people's opinions, and in turn not cultivating the right homeschool for our family. So if we put ourselves under the authority of anybody else's opinion other than somebody, you know, who's doing that in love, say your husband or your parents, if they understand homeschooling and actually want to help, then, you know, then it's no longer our homeschool. So something, again, I had to learn the hard way. Homeschooling is for me and my family, not for others and other people's opinions. Homeschooling is not an easy way out. I think, again, I've never heard this from anybody, but I have heard other people hear this from other people, that, you know, that it's, oh, must be nice to not have to get out of your pajamas, or must be nice to, the must be nice thing that we tend to fall victim to every now and then. And it's just not, it's not the easy way out, because you reap what you sow. If you do stay in your pajamas and you don't start school till 1 consistently for any other reason than just that you had no motivation, there are consequences to that, natural consequences. Same, you know, if you push too hard, there are natural consequences to that. So it's finding a good balance for your family, and it's definitely not the easy way out, because there's nobody to catch you when you fall. It's totally up to whatever amount of effort you put into it. This is one I would like to go say to myself way back when. Homeschooling is not cheap, or at least not always. I think that when we started, I thought, well, I think I was going to use the same curriculum as the private school we were considering putting our oldest daughter in when we started, you know, at 4. And I thought, well, instead of paying $5,000 a year to go to that school, I can just do it at home. When you tally everything up, it is not that much cheaper than sending them to a private school sometimes. So for us, when we factor in extension units and field trips and the cost of food at the house all the time, and curriculum and supplies, and being a stay-at-home parent, at the end of the day, honestly, for us, it is not any cheaper to stay at home than it would be if they were going to a private school and I was teaching, or you know, whatever. Yeah, it's not cheaper, and I'm sure many of you can attest to that, especially having a large family and you're buying multiple, you know, different curriculum, or you live somewhere. We live in a place that's very close to a lot of opportunities, so it's hard for us to say no to going to this museum, that museum, this field trip kind of a thing. So yes, definitely not a cheap way out. If that is the sole purpose for homeschooling, you might find out that you may be disappointed in that. This is an expectation that I kind of identified more recently that I had, because I was beginning to get disappointed, and then I realized, oh, it's because I had this certain expectation. Homeschooling does not always promise good relationships with siblings or parent-sibling relationships. I believe if I were to look back toward the beginning of homeschooling, and what I envisioned was just such a happy-go-lucky family, and everybody's always getting along because everyone's growing up together. But everybody growing up together day by day also leads into more opportunities to have little arguments and disagreements. And while you're there to work things out, I think in the long run, it is great, that you're there to help guide them, as long as you're not refereeing everything, as long as you're teaching them, good resolution and communication skills. But it means that there's a lot more spats and a lot more opportunities for arguments. And so, yeah, in the long run, I think it will lead to good relationships, and I hope that it will. I hope my kids look back with fond memories, but it doesn't just naturally happen because you happen to all be in the same house all the time. So homeschooling in itself does not lead to perfect relationships. Homeschooling is definitely not one size fits all, even within your own home. This is something that everybody kind of warned me about. I was very headstrong when I started, very excited, and I would say like all my kids and kind of group them all together. And or I would want to try out this curriculum because it looks so great for this family, and everybody would say you have to find your own rhythm, and I couldn't understand what that meant. Now, having two have a second and a fourth grader right now, I'm seeing how different they are, even though they're very close in age, and I'm definitely tailoring their education and their experiences a little bit differently from one another. And I kind of just thought we would all be on the same page. I'd use this curriculum for her, then we'd use it for him, then we use it for him, then we use it for her. And that's probably not going to be the case, although there are many subjects that we can do together. I just have a different expectation of each individual child. Or I ask them to do something different. You color and draw a picture, you give me an oral narration, things like that. So it's definitely not one size fits all. Again, something I had to learn the hard way. And last but not least, this is something that I'm still in the process of learning. Homeschooling is not measured by your motivation. So a lot of times toward the end of the school year, I'll experience burnout. I'm actually not experiencing that this year, and it's very refreshing. But the last 2 years especially, I definitely experienced that March, April burnout, and I just felt like maybe I wasn't a good homeschool mom. The reality is that my ability to homeschool should not be measured by my personal motivation. Sometimes I want to do unit studies with them. Sometimes we just do read alouds and we don't do any science projects that go along with it. It doesn't mean they're getting a lesser experience. It doesn't mean that when you are motivated that they're having a better educational experience. Of course, we always aim for consistency, but just because sometimes I'm excited and sometimes I'm not, doesn't mean that they're getting a worse experience or not getting the best education for them. So that's something that I have to remind myself of. Just because this friend or that friend are super motivated and their kids are doing these great units, and my kids and I are kind of stuck on the same read aloud and not making much progress because of me, doesn't mean that you're not a good homeschooling mom or that you're having a bad homeschooling year. It just means that this is the season that you're in, and your experience as a whole, when you look back on this entire homeschooling journey, won't be measured by the highs and lows of how motivated you were as a mom. So those are my thoughts. Those are the realities of my expectations when I started homeschooling and where we are now. I would love to hear what homeschooling is not to you. What have you learned the hard way? And what wisdom do you have to share to other homeschooling moms? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you soon.